We are live.
We are
Hello,
live.
Energy Road friends and family and people who don't even know us. Brian, roll the logo.
Hello,
So,
Peter. What's happening?
man, let me tell you, this is Bill Shanahan, Brian Pierre. We are here today with it, and we are Energy Rogue, and we're here to talk about a war that never should be, and that's renewables and fossil fuels.
Sounds like somebody's got a case of the Mondays.
On a Wednesday, even. So, So, it's always been interesting because people feel like they have to take a side between renewables and fossil fuels.
Right.
And it's like there is a moral dilemma here. And as you do your research, we find out the moral dilemma is that really there is no higher way of creating power that we know of today. Everything has an environmental impact, everything has a human impact. And so sometimes we don't like to admit it. Sometimes we think that one is worse than the other. Sometimes we think it's because it's happening somewhere else and not in our backyard. That makes it morally superior. All that is a struggle. Here's what to me is the moral dilemma to us today is, do we want to see people in energy poverty? That's a new term for a lot of people. So, Brian, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing right now as far as focusing on renewables and fossil fuels. We can't solve all the questions right now, but let's talk about what it's like in the concept of electrical generation.
Well, the big before I do a little show and tell, the big problem is that there is this common consensus between renewables and fossil fuels that have this opinion.
And he took my stapler and he never brought it back.
And so
Exactly right.
there's this concern that one is going to replace the other, and the fact is that there's a complement needed. And now long term we may transition to less carbon based fuel sources. Maybe that's better, but the problem is that we get a political skew on the side of the debate, and the fact of the matter is that when you look at renewables, the impression is that 100% is clean. Well, a lot of the products that for wind turbines and for solar panels, the distribution to get it there was all fossil fuel driven. So that's the big problem that we have, is that we have this conflict. But when we look at it, we have had a massive build out, and people are talking about this has been massive. But one of the things that we wanted to bring light to is, let's see, on this fancy platform, this is called Energy Rogue.
Wow.
I mean,
That is so cool. It's something everybody can use. Is
I
that what it's
wish
saying?
somebody had a coffee cup with a logo. Like every member that wants a coffee mug, they're going to get one. So if you come sign
Yeah.
up, we'll give you a coffee mug. But anyhow,
And if you
so
catch us at the right time, we'll actually be at a restaurant and we'll fill it for you.
yeah. So today is the 25th of January, and Bill and I are in different time zones. But when we take a look at this chart is updated up to the 24th. And what we have, let's take a look a couple days ago.
So let's talk
This,
about what this is. This is U.S. electrical generation by source.
yep, and this is based on hour. So what you can see, the time scale is in GMT, which anybody who's worked in different time zones, GMT is very difficult to track, but essentially you take the hours minus 7, and that gets you to central, I believe. Don't
I
hold me
think
to
it's
that.
central. Yeah.
Yeah. So this says it's 2000 hours, or what is that?
I think it's
1
7
o'clock.
hours
That's
central, on standard daylight time, not daylight savings time.
Yeah. So let's take a brief look. This is the middle of the day. Okay. So this is 12 o'clock. This is noon. Let's look at noon. So theoretically, solar is at its peak or thereabouts for the day. Coal contributed 91,000 megawatts. Yeah.
Just shy of a gigawatt.
Yeah. So nuclear 96, natural gas 180, solar 29, water 28. So what you can see is natural gas 180 versus solar 29 versus water 28 versus wind 19. Now, there are different times of day where wind and solar come in, but one of the facts is that natural gas is still a very heavy contributor to electricity. So if somebody buys a Tesla, well, maybe that's good, but they're fueling it with natural gas by displacement because the power is being generated by natural gas or coal. You know, coal is still present, and you can look, this is a daily history, and you can see the green is natural gas, red nuclear, and blue is coal. The majority of our energy sources are coming from those three sources, with wind coming in at different times of the day.
So let's be careful. You call that energy sources. That's actually our electrical sources.
Electrical sources. Yes, good clarification.
Because actually, coal really has very little market other than electrical generation.
Right.
Nuclear is the exact same thing. It only can produce electricity. But natural gas, only roughly 40% of natural gas goes to electrical generation.
Well, and here's a chart. Let me clean this up so we can just look at the raw data. So this is by month, how much natural gas was consumed for electric. And it's roughly 23,000 or 23 BCF a day to 45 BCF a day. So call it 35 BCF year round out of 100.
Right.
So a third of our natural gas is going to electricity. And that's important because any disruptions on the natural gas side impact electric. Any disruptions on the electric impact natural gas. So
Right.
these are interrelated. And as wind and solar come in, the biggest challenge is if it gets windy, and this is why battery storage is so big. If it gets windy at 2 a.m., well, we don't need as much power because everybody's sleeping.
Right.
So the lights aren't on. So if it gets windy, there's not an adequate way or an efficient way to store it today. They're working on it. They've been working on it for years. I've heard it for 20 years. I've got faith in science. They'll figure something out at some point, but
well, I think it's also important to note that both coal and nuclear are base load sources. And what that means is they cannot be turned off. They can't ramp up and down because that makes them the most inefficient and most expensive if you do that.
So the biggest challenge that people have not discussed yet, and this is why I get frustrated with the debate, renewables versus fossil fuels, we have to work on how we're going to integrate, because the fact of the matter is that if wind and solar push out natural gas, the pipe is going to be the balancing source, and it only has a finite amount that it can source it by. The other has to come from natural gas storage caverns, which may be 2 days away. I mean,
Right.
so there's a limit to where if our electricity usage, I mean, the Texas power crisis, that can happen in the middle of the summer.
Right.
That could happen and not just in Texas. People are pointing at ERCOT. It's like, no, the entire grid across the nation is this way. Problem is that if we don't start talking about how we integrate and how we balance between the two, we are going to be worse off, and
Well,
we're going to have brownouts.
I've always referred to it as having the appropriate source to the appropriate sink. So really, that source would be obviously your nat gas, but sink is also your market. So there are sometimes I heard it the other day put like this: you take wind power and solar power and try to compare California and Germany. Those are the two big wind power and solar power places. Well, California doesn't have snow. They have lots of sunshine and they have lots of wind. Germany, not so much. So it's amazing to me that anybody thought that it was going to be comparable.
Right.
Because Germany is not the place for that.
But it looks like I'm working.
Exactly. And so, but we lose all that objectivity in the subjectivity of the discussions.
And listen, we are non-political. We don't want to play politics, but there is a common thread, which renewables versus fossil fuels, and we're like, stop. We need both.
Right.
The fact of the matter is that let's take one last look at this. Our total electric consumption on natural gas. Let's look at this. This is on a negative, so negative means increasing demand. If you take a look from 2006, we were 12 to 27, so call it 20 on average to 35. We've done nothing but increase the
Right.
amount of dependence on natural gas. And so this is a direct correlation to we need to figure it out, because of the other fact of the matter is that well, we have adequate supply today, but we'll save this for another discussion. Will we tomorrow? Do we have adequate resources, tier 1 versus tier 2 rock, and decline rates? I mean, we have to replace over 30 BCF a day every year in new production to
Right.
stay flat, roughly. Some may debate that down to 25. It's a lot. That's a lot. That's a lot of gas that we need to replace, and that's something that does not come up in the discussion. So
And
anyway,
on the other side, then even on the renewable side, you talk about how much capacity that you have to have in order to have a standard. So if your wind, I think, is at 30%, so that means you have to build 3 times as many wind turbines to get that 1 megawatt.
Sound the alarm.
You have to build 3 megawatts to get 1 megawatt. So it's not a slam dunk, easy A or B choice.
Yep. And
if you've boiled it down to that, then you've missed significant amounts of data.
Yep. So that's all I had on my side. Did you have anything else? Should we bring it home?
I think it's time to bring it home, brother. Bring it home.
So
I wish I could say something that was classy and inspirational, but that just wouldn't be our style.
We're neither classy or inspirational.
No. It's not our style. Anyway,
Folks,
if you have questions, reach out to us. So Bill, I cut you off.
No, I'm just saying that if you have opinions, let us know. But just realize that we're expecting you to come with us with data and not emotions.
Yep.
So
all
right.
Well, listen, that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much. Reach out to us if you got any questions, and come visit us and reach out to us directly, rogue@energyrogue.com, and that'll come to Bill and I, and we'll get back to you as soon as we
subscribe and like.
Yeah, do all that stuff for the algorithms. We live in an algorithm world, right?
Algorithmic? Is that what it would be?
Algorithm.
Algorithms is
all the quants that I worked with, I would torture them with, well, what do the algorithms say? And they're like, it's not the word, Brian. And I'm like,
it works.
Yeah, it works. So anyway, thanks so much. Hope you have a great day, and we will see you soon.